Dangerous intelligence isn't about being smart. It's about being smart in a way that breaks you. There's a type of mind that doesn't just process information faster, it processes reality differently. And psychology has documented exactly what that does to a person, not the inspirational version, the clinical one. Most videos about high intelligence treat it like a superpower. This isn't that video, because the research tells a different story, a story about children who understood death before they understood friendship, adults who feel every emotion at volume 11, while everyone else cruises at a manageable 4, people whose minds work so fast they can't make simple decisions anymore. Kazimierz Dabrowski spent decades studying gifted individuals, and he didn't call them blessed. He called them candidates for positive disintegration, the theory that highly intelligent people have to psychologically fall apart before they can become whole, that the breakdowns aren't symptoms of weakness, they're requirements. You don't just think more, you feel more, you see more, you carry more. And the weight of that creates specific patterns so consistent that psychologists can identify them like fingerprints. These aren't the cute quirks of intelligence, oh you read fast, or you're good at math. These are the signs that your nervous system is wired differently, that your brain is running software most people don't have installed, and that software comes with costs nobody warned you about. The Terman studies tracked high IQ children for 80 years. You know what they found? Higher rates of divorce, higher rates of alcoholism, higher rates of suicide. Not because intelligence made them successful and success made them miserable, because intelligence itself created a permanent gap between them and almost everyone else. If you've ever felt like an alien wearing a human costume, this isn't metaphor, it's neurology. If you've ever wondered why joy feels muted but pain feels endless, there's a reason. If simple things exhaust you while complex things energize you, if you've been called too intense or too much or too sensitive your entire life, these aren't personality flaws. They're signs, 7 specific signs that psychology has identified. Not in self-help books, in clinical research, in decades of studying what actually happens to people whose minds operate in the cognitive minority. This video isn't going to make you feel better about yourself. It's going to make you feel seen, and those two things are not the same. Start with the first sign, the one that shows up earliest and never really leaves. You don't just get sad, you get demolished. You don't just get excited, you get manic. Every emotion that passes through you arrives amplified, extended, inescapable. While other people feel things and move on, you're still processing 3 days later, still thinking about that conversation, still feeling that disappointment like it happened 5 minutes ago. This isn't sensitivity, this is what Dabrowski called emotional overexcitability. It's one of 5 overexcitabilities he identified in highly intelligent people, and it's the most destructive one, because you can't turn it off. Your nervous system doesn't have a volume knob. It has 2 settings, everything or nothing. When something good happens, you feel euphoric in a way that makes other people uncomfortable. You're too happy, too enthusiastic, too much. So you learn to dial it down, to fake a normal level of excitement, so you don't seem unhinged. But when something bad happens, there's no faking your way out of that. You feel betrayal like a knife, disappointment like a collapse, loss like the end of the world. And while everyone around you is saying it's not that big of a deal, your body is having a physiological crisis. Your brain isn't being dramatic. It's responding accurately to the intensity it's actually experiencing. The research on this is clear. Gifted individuals don't just think about emotions, they live inside them. Their emotional reactions last longer, cut deeper, and require more recovery time than the general population. And here's where it gets worse. Because you feel everything so intensely, you also remember everything intensely. Emotional memory doesn't fade for you the way it does for others. That embarrassing thing you said 7 years ago, still fresh. That moment someone betrayed you, still sharp. Your past isn't past. It's a library of emotional experiences you can access in full resolution whenever your brain decides to torture you with them. So you do what any intelligent person does. You start trying to control the emotions. You analyze them. You try to logic your way out of feeling. You build elaborate frameworks to explain why you shouldn't be this upset. But you can't think your way out of overexcitability, because it's not happening in your prefrontal cortex. It's happening in your limbic system, in your amygdala, in the parts of your brain that don't respond to reason. You're not being irrational, you're being exactly as rational as someone can be while their nervous system is on fire. And the cruelest part, other people interpret your intensity as instability. They think you're dramatic, exhausting, too much work, when really you're just operating with the emotional equivalent of surround sound while they're listening through phone speakers. You feel everything they feel, plus everything they're not saying, plus everything they don't even know they're feeling, plus the implications of all of it, plus the future consequences, plus the past patterns. It's not that you're more emotional, it's that your emotional bandwidth is too wide for normal life. So you learn to go numb, to shut down, to protect yourself from the intensity by feeling nothing at all. And then people say you're cold, detached, unfeeling. They have no idea you're not choosing numbness. You're collapsing under the weight of feeling too much for too long, with no way to regulate it down to a survivable level. Dabrowski said this intensity wasn't a disorder. He said it was a requirement for psychological growth, that you have to feel everything at dangerous levels before you can integrate it into wisdom. But he never promised it would feel like anything other than repeated emotional annihilation. You were 8 years old, arguing philosophy with adults. And you were also 8 years old, crying because your shoelaces wouldn't cooperate. This is asynchronous development, and it doesn't go away just because you grew up. In psychology, asynchronous development describes what happens when different parts of you mature at wildly different rates. Your intellectual capacity races ahead, your emotional regulation lags behind, your moral reasoning develops faster than your ability to execute those ideals. Your body stays a child while your mind becomes ancient. The research on gifted children shows this pattern consistently. A 10-year-old with the reasoning ability of an 18-year-old but the emotional resilience of a 7-year-old. They can discuss death and meaning and cosmic insignificance with startling depth, and then they have a meltdown because dinner isn't the food they expected. Adults see the intelligence and forget about the rest. They expect you to act your mental age. They give you responsibilities you can intellectually handle but emotionally can't. And when you crack under the pressure, they call it immaturity. But you weren't immature, you were asynchronous. And here's what nobody tells you, that asynchrony doesn't resolve, it just shifts. You become an adult with a mind that can hold paradoxes, deconstruct arguments, see 5 moves ahead and emotions that still react like you're 12. You understand complexity but feel in extremes. You can philosophically accept impermanence and still be devastated when something ends. Other people integrated as they grew. Their intellect and emotions developed together at roughly the same pace, creating a coherent self. You didn't get that. You got fragments that developed independently and never quite synchronized. So you feel like a child pretending to be an adult, or an old soul trapped in a life you never asked for. You don't feel your age because you never have. Age has always been a lie for you, a number that doesn't match any version of yourself. The research calls this internal disynchrony, the experience of being multiple ages simultaneously, of having parts of you that are wise beyond years and parts that are still waiting to grow up. And it creates a specific kind of exhaustion, because you're constantly translating between these parts of yourself. Your intellectual self understands why someone hurt you. Your emotional self is still destroyed by it. Your moral self knows what you should do. Your practical self can't make your body do it. You're not indecisive. You're negotiating between versions of yourself that want different things and developed at different times. The tragedy is that asynchronous development often means you understood things before you were ready to understand them. You grasped mortality as a child. You saw through social lies before you'd learned how to navigate them. You recognized your parents' limitations before you had the emotional capacity to forgive them. You had adult realizations with a child's nervous system, and that creates wounds that don't heal. They just become part of your architecture. People who develop synchronously get to discover complexity gradually. Their emotions and intellect grow together, holding hands, supporting each other. You got thrown into the deep end of understanding before anyone taught you how to swim, and you've been treading water ever since, pretending you're not drowning, because your mind knows how to swim even though your body never learned. This is why highly intelligent people often describe feeling like imposters, not because they're frauds, but because the self everyone sees, the competent, articulate, high-functioning version, is only one fragment. The other fragments are still children, still confused, still scared. And you can't tell anyone that, because they only believe in the fragment they can see. So you keep performing as the integrated person you've never actually been, and the gap between who you appear to be and who you actually are just keeps widening. Asynchronous development doesn't make you broken, it makes you permanently out of sync with yourself, and that's so much worse. The sound of fluorescent lights is painful. The seam in your sock feels like a knife. Someone's perfume 3 seats away makes you nauseous. This isn't preference, this is sensual overexcitability. While other people filter sensory input automatically, your nervous system receives everything at full blast. Textures, sounds, lights, smells, the hum of electronics, the flicker of LED bulbs, the scratch of certain fabrics against your skin. Normal sensory processing works like a bouncer at a club. It decides what gets through and what gets blocked. Your sensory processing let everyone in at once, and now your nervous system is overcrowded, overstimulated, constantly at capacity. Dabrowski identified this as one of the 5 overexcitabilities, and it's the one people understand least, because it doesn't look like intelligence, it looks like being difficult. You can't eat certain foods because the texture makes you gag. You can't wear certain clothes because they feel like sandpaper. You can't focus in certain environments because your brain is too busy processing the hum of the air conditioner and the flicker of the screen and the smell of someone's lunch and the feeling of the chair against your back. Other people think you're high maintenance, picky, overly sensitive. They don't understand that you're not choosing to be bothered. You're drowning in sensory information that their brains automatically filtered out before it reached consciousness. And it's not just unpleasant sensations, it's everything. Beauty hits you harder. Music doesn't just sound good, it overwhelms you, stops you in your tracks, makes you cry for reasons you can't explain. Art moves through you like electricity. A sunset doesn't just look nice, it feels like a religious experience. You experience pleasure and pain through the same amplified channel, which means joy is ecstatic and discomfort is agony, and there's no in-between. The research on sensory processing in gifted individuals shows heightened sensitivity across all domains. They don't just notice more, they feel more from what they notice. Their sensory cortex doesn't filter for relevance, it treats everything as equally important. This is why crowds are unbearable, why parties drain you, why you need silence and darkness to recover from a normal day. You're not antisocial, you're sensorially exhausted. And here's the trap. People expect you to function normally in environments that are constantly overloading you. Open offices, bright lights, background music, small talk, multiple conversations happening simultaneously. Your brain is trying to process all of it at once. You're hearing every conversation, noticing every movement, feeling every texture, smelling every smell. And you're also trying to work, to think, to be productive. It's like trying to read a book while someone's screaming in your ear, except nobody else hears the screaming. So you do what you've always done. You push through. You pretend the lights don't hurt. You smile through the noise, you ignore the nausea from the smell, and then you get home and collapse, completely spent, not from doing anything particularly difficult, but from existing in a world that wasn't designed for nervous systems like yours. Other people recharge by going out. You recharge by eliminating input. Dark rooms, silence, soft clothes, no demands. You're not depressed, you're overstimulated. But nobody sees the difference. They just see someone who can't handle normal life, someone who's always making excuses, always needing accommodations, always being difficult. They don't see that you're operating with the sensory equivalent of exposed nerve endings, that what feels like a mild annoyance to them feels like an assault to you. And the worst part, you start to believe them. You start to think something's wrong with you, that you should be able to handle this, that everyone else manages fine, so why can't you? But everyone else isn't receiving reality through 10 channels while you're receiving it through 50. You're not weak. You're just processing more data than your system was designed to hold. And there's no off switch. You've learned to translate yourself. Every conversation is a calculation. How much can I say before I lose them? How simple do I need to make this? Which version of myself do I perform right now? This is what psychologists call cognitive minority stress. And it's not about being smarter than everyone. It's about being statistically alone. The math is brutal. If you're 2 standard deviations above average intelligence, IQ 130 or higher, You can only relate easily to about 2% of the population. 3 standard deviations. That drops to 1 in 1,000. Every 15 IQ points creates a communication barrier. Not because you're arrogant, because your brain literally processes language, concepts, and connections differently. Stephanie Tolan spent decades researching this phenomenon. She found that highly intelligent people exist in a permanent cognitive minority, surrounded by people they can't fully communicate with, constantly adjusting their language, simplifying their thoughts, dumbing themselves down just to be understood. And the cost of that constant translation is identity fragmentation. You develop a false self. The version of you that speaks in shorter sentences, laughs at simpler jokes, pretends not to notice what you notice. The version that can survive social situations without making everyone uncomfortable. And that false self gets praised, gets liked, gets invited back. While your real self, the one that thinks in layers and sees connections and can't turn off the analysis, stays hidden, stays silent, stays alone. The research on this is devastating. Gifted individuals report feeling like actors in their own lives. They can perform normalcy so well that nobody knows they're performing. But the gap between the performed self and the actual self creates a specific kind of psychological damage. Because intimacy becomes impossible. How do you get close to someone when they don't know who you actually are? When every conversation requires you to edit yourself in real time? When your authentic thoughts would either confuse them or alienate them, so you've learned to only share the translated version? You can be surrounded by people and still be completely alone, because they don't know you. They know the simplified character you created, so they'd let you stay. And here's the cruelest part. You can't even blame them. They're not rejecting you on purpose. They genuinely can't follow where your mind goes. The cognitive gap isn't personal, it's statistical, but it feels personal. It feels like you're too much, too weird, too intense, too complicated. So you learn to make yourself smaller, simpler, more digestible. And the person you were before all that translation, you barely remember them, because you've been performing for so long that the false self feels more real than whatever's underneath. This is what cognitive minority stress does. It forces you to choose between authenticity and connection. And most people choose connection because the alternative is unbearable isolation. But here's what the research shows. Even when you choose connection, you're still isolated, because the connection is with your mask, not with you. The gifted adults Tolan studied described their social lives as exhausting performances. Every interaction required code switching. Every relationship required constant calibration. How much of myself can I show before this person gets uncomfortable? You become fluent in multiple languages of simplification. You learn exactly how to say something complex in a way that sounds simple. You develop a whole vocabulary of accessible translations for thoughts that are anything but accessible. And people think you're great at explaining things. They think you're patient, a good communicator. They don't realize you've had a lifetime of practice hiding what you actually think. The loneliness of the cognitive minority isn't about lacking people. It's about lacking people who can meet you where you actually are, who don't need the translation, who can follow your mind without you having to slow down or simplify or perform. And those people are statistically rare, so rare that you might go years without meeting one. Decades even. So you make peace with the exile. You stop expecting to be fully known. You accept that connection will always be partial, always translated, always slightly out of reach. You learn to be lonely in crowded rooms, and you stop trying to explain why. You can't make a simple decision anymore. Not because you're indecisive, but because your brain automatically runs every choice through infinite loops of consequence. Should you take that job? Well, that depends on what you value. But what do you value? And why do you value that? And is that value actually yours or something you absorbed from culture? And if you take the job, what does that say about who you're becoming? And who are you becoming? And is that who you want to be? And how do you even know what you want, when every want can be deconstructed into prior causes? This is second-order thinking, thinking about thinking. And for highly intelligent people, it doesn't stop at second order. It goes third, fourth, fifth. Recursive loops that turn simple questions into philosophical paralysis. The research on this comes from multiple directions. Barry Schwartz's work on the paradox of choice. Daniel Kahneman's studies on decision fatigue in high-complexity thinkers. The curse of knowledge studies that show how expertise makes simple things impossibly complicated. They all point to the same conclusion. The smarter you are, the harder it is to choose anything. Because you see too many angles, too many futures, too many variables. While other people pick a direction and move, you're still mapping out every possible consequence, every hidden cost, every unintended outcome. You don't just think about what will happen, you think about what could happen, and what that means, and what it means that, and whether the meaning you're assigning is accurate or just another story you're telling yourself. Other people think in straight lines. You think in spirals that loop back on themselves until you can't remember where you started. And the worst part, you can argue both sides of anything, convincingly. You can build an airtight case for one choice, then immediately dismantle it and build an equally airtight case for the opposite. This isn't intellectual flexibility. This is intellectual quicksand. Because if you can argue for anything, how do you choose? If every position has merit and every position has flaws, what makes one decision better than another? So you freeze, not from fear, but from an excess of understanding. You see the validity in too many directions simultaneously. The research shows that highly intelligent people take longer to make decisions, change their minds more frequently, and experience more regret after choosing, not because they chose wrong, but because they can still see all the paths they didn't take. Your brain won't let you forget what you gave up. It keeps running simulations of the alternate timeline where you chose differently, and it's convincing, because that alternate timeline isn't fantasy. It's a legitimate possibility you consciously rejected. So every choice becomes a small grief, a closing of doors you can still see through. And people think you're overthinking. They tell you to just pick something, to trust your gut, to stop analyzing and start doing. But your gut speaks in probabilities. Your instinct is to analyze. You don't know how to just choose because your brain doesn't have a just choose function. It only has the examine from every angle until nothing makes sense function. This is why smart people often envy simpler minds. They watch people make decisions quickly, confidently, without apparent torture, and they wonder what that must feel like, to want something without immediately questioning why you want it, to choose something without running it through 17 layers of meta-analysis. The irony is that second-order thinking is supposed to make you better at decisions. In theory, seeing more angles should help you choose wisely, but in practice it just helps you see why every choice is simultaneously right and wrong. So you develop decision paralysis as a permanent condition. Small choices become existential. What to eat for dinner requires weighing health goals against pleasure, against budget, against ethics, against time, against what it says about your values. And by the time you've thought through all of that, you're not even hungry anymore. You're just tired. Tired of your mind turning everything into a philosophical problem. Tired of never being able to do something without first understanding why you're doing it, and whether you should be doing it, and what it means that you're doing it. Other people live in the first order. They experience life directly. You live in the fifth order. You experience your experience of your experience of your experience of life. And there's no way back down to simple. Close your eyes and you see a dozen futures simultaneously. Not daydreams, not wishes. Detailed, vivid simulations of things that haven't happened and probably never will. This is imaginational overexcitability. And it's not creativity, it's cognitive invasion. Dabrowski identified this as one of the core traits of high intelligence, an imagination so active it blurs the line between what's real and what's possible. Your mind generates scenarios constantly, without permission, without pause. You're having a conversation and simultaneously running a simulation of how it could go wrong. You're planning a trip, and your brain is already showing you everything that could fail. You're in a relationship, and you can see in perfect clarity exactly how it ends. Not because you're pessimistic, because your imagination doesn't distinguish between useful simulation and psychological torture. The research on this is scattered but consistent. Gifted individuals report intrusive imagery, vivid mental pictures that arrive uninvited and won't leave. Not just visual but sensory. You can imagine a scenario so clearly you almost feel it happening. You smell the smoke before the fire starts. You feel the heartbreak before the relationship ends. You hear the argument before anyone says a word. And you can't turn it off. Other people imagine things when they choose to. You imagine things constantly, whether you want to or not. Your brain treats potential futures as equally real as the present moment. This is why anxiety and high intelligence are so tightly linked. Not because smart people are more worried, but because their minds automatically generate worst-case scenarios in high definition. You walk into a building, and your brain shows you the exits, the structural weaknesses, the ways it could collapse. You meet someone new and your imagination runs a full profile, who they might be, what they might want, how they might hurt you. You're not paranoid. You're imaginationally overstimulated. And it's not just negative scenarios. Your mind also generates elaborate fantasies, entire conversations that never happened, alternative versions of your life, fictional relationships with real people, worlds that feel more vivid than the one you're actually living in. You spend so much time in simulation that reality starts to feel like one option among many, not the most interesting option, just the one that happens to be physically occurring. This is where things get dangerous. Because when your imagination is this active, you start to lose track of what's memory and what's invention. Did that conversation actually happen, or did you just imagine it so vividly it feels like it happened? Psychologists call this source confusion. Your brain stores imagined events with the same clarity as real ones, so you're constantly fact-checking your own memory, trying to figure out what was real and what was just another simulation. And people think you're making things up. They think you're dramatic, exaggerating, living in fantasy. They don't understand that you can't control what your imagination generates. You can only choose what you do with it. And most of the time, you're just trying to not drown in the flood of scenarios your mind produces. The Gifted Children researchers studied described this experience as living in multiple timelines. They could see their present life clearly, but they could also see 5 other versions of it simultaneously. The life where they made a different choice, the life where something went differently, the life they might still have if they could just figure out how to get there. This isn't dissociation, it's hyper-association. Your mind connects to too many possibilities at once. And the cruelest part? Your imagination shows you perfect versions of things that can never exist. Perfect conversations where you say exactly the right thing. Perfect relationships without the actual complications of other people. Perfect versions of yourself who made better choices. And then you have to live in reality, where nothing is perfect, and everything is compromised, and the gap between what you can imagine and what you can actually have is unbearable. So you retreat into imagination more, because at least there, things make sense. At least there you have control. At least there the world bends to internal logic instead of chaotic circumstance. But you can't live in imagination, you can only visit. And every time you come back to reality, it feels more disappointing than before. Your mind gave you the ability to see infinite possibilities, but it didn't give you the ability to make any of them real. So you're trapped between a perfect imagination and an imperfect life, and that gap never closes. You were 5 years old when you first asked why anything exists at all, not why am I here in the purpose sense, why there's something instead of nothing, why consciousness, why the universe bothers, and nobody had an answer that satisfied you. This is existential intelligence. Howard Gardner proposed it as a 9th intelligence, the capacity to contemplate the fundamental questions of existence, mortality, meaning, cosmic perspective, the nature of reality itself. Most people develop filters that keep these questions at bay. They live inside meaning systems, religion, culture, career, family, and those systems provide enough structure that the void underneath stays hidden. You don't have those filters. You can see through every meaning system to the arbitrary foundation beneath it. You understand that meaning is constructed, not discovered. That every value system is just humans agreeing to care about certain things because the alternative is staring into meaninglessness. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. This isn't depression, this is clarity, uncomfortable, destabilizing, inescapable clarity. The research on existential depression in gifted individuals goes back decades. Ruth Powell documented how intellectually advanced children experience existential crises as young as 5 or 6 years old. They grasp mortality before their emotions can process it. They understand cosmic insignificance before they've developed coping mechanisms. They see the truth too early, and it breaks something that never fully heals. You grow up carrying questions that most people never ask. Not because you're morbid, but because your mind automatically zooms out to the largest possible frame. You can't stay focused on the details of life when you're constantly aware of the cosmic context. Someone's excited about a promotion. You're thinking about how none of this matters in 100 years. Someone's devastated by a breakup. You're thinking about how all relationships end either in separation or death, so loss is just the inevitable conclusion to connection. You're not trying to be dark, you're just aware of the full picture, and the full picture is dark. This is why highly intelligent people oscillate between wonder and nihilism, because existential intelligence cuts both ways. You can contemplate the mystery of consciousness and feel profound awe, and 5 minutes later, you can contemplate the eventual heat death of the universe and feel crushing despair. You live at the cosmic scale, and human life is very small at that scale. The problem is that you still have to live a human life. You still have to care about things that your existential awareness tells you don't matter. You still have to make plans, pursue goals, build relationships, all while knowing that everything is temporary and meaning is a story we tell ourselves to tolerate existence. This creates a specific kind of exhaustion. Existential exhaustion. You're tired of holding the paradox, tired of caring about things you know are ultimately meaningless, tired of pretending you don't see the void that everyone else successfully ignores. And you can't talk about this because when you try, people think you're depressed. They offer solutions, therapy, medication, perspective shifts. They don't understand that you're not sick. You're just awake in a way that most people aren't. The research shows that people with existential intelligence often feel isolated even among other intelligent people, because not everyone who's smart thinks at the existential level. Some people can be brilliant in their field and still live comfortably inside a meaning system, but you can't. You're outside all the systems. You can study them, understand them, even participate in them temporarily, but you can never believe. And that's the loneliest part. Not that you're alone in a room, but that you're alone in your awareness, surrounded by people who live inside meaning. While you watch from outside it, you envy them sometimes. The people who can believe, who can commit fully to something without the whisper of existential doubt, who can feel purpose without immediately deconstructing where that sense of purpose comes from. They get to live in the story. You only get to see that it's a story. Gardner said existential intelligence was the rarest type, but he never said it was a gift. He just said some people have the capacity to think at this level. Capacity isn't the same as choice. You didn't choose to see existence this way. Your mind just does, automatically, relentlessly, without offering you the option to look away. And now you're here, aware of the void, unable to ignore it, unable to fill it with comfortable lies. Most people are afraid of death. You're afraid of life, of having to live in a reality you understand too completely to ever feel at home in. The dangerous part of dangerous intelligence isn't that it makes you different, it's that it makes you aware of exactly how different you are, how alone that makes you, and how permanent that condition is. You can't unlearn what you know. You can't unfeel what you feel. You can't go back to the simple comfort of not asking why. Your mind gave you the ability to understand existence, but understanding doesn't make existence easier. It just makes it inescapable. And that's the final sign, the one that encompasses all the others. You see too much, feel too much, think too much, simulate too much, question too much, understand too much. And too much isn't hyperbole. It's the clinical reality of a nervous system that processes more than it was built to hold. Dabrowski said positive disintegration was necessary, that you have to fall apart before you can integrate at a higher level. But he never promised you'd survive the falling. So where does this leave you? Carrying a nervous system that was never designed for the world you have to navigate, feeling everything at dangerous intensity, thinking in recursive loops that never resolve, living in permanent exile from easy connection. Dabrowski said the disintegration was necessary, that you have to fall apart before you can integrate at a higher level. But he never told you how to survive the falling. The 7 signs aren't something you fix, they're what you live with, and maybe understanding them helps you stop thinking something's wrong with you. But if you want to understand what's actually happening in other people, the psychological patterns beneath their masks, the 2 specific behaviors that reveal their true character and predict exactly how they'll treat you, watch this next. Because while your intelligence isolates you, understanding how people really work might help you navigate the world anyway.